You know, one of the things that really kind of, in a sense, makes me happy is when people come to realize that, for the most part, a video game that they perceived was bad is not as bad as they initially thought. After playing the game or taking the step to dive in, sometimes they realize that the game appeals to them. Now, sometimes the opposite is the case, but I usually like these scenarios and these situations where people come back on the channel and they talk about Gotham Knights and say, man, I can't believe that I didn't necessarily think this game was going to be anything. Turned out to be one of the better games I've played. So Stankhouse1278, shout out to you. Longtime follower of your content. I helped over from the Gamer Dad channel. This is my main channel, guys. And I do the Division content there. It's an RPG shooter. First, I want to say that I appreciate the work of the content that you provide. Your different perspective on Game Talk. I agree with your observations regarding Gotham Knights overall. All I heard was that this game was crap. Picked up a PS5 the other day and got Gotham Knights on sale. I wasn't expecting much based on what the reviews, and looking at the gameplay footage, doesn't do the game justice. But I loved it and wonder why it gets so much grief. It's a pretty damn good RPG, and that's it. I like RPGs, particularly looters. Unfortunately, this game gets crapped on because it's not Arkham and functions differently. However, I do believe if it was viewed from an RPG perspective, it might get a little more appreciation. Well, at least from RPG players. Anyways, keep up the good work. Appreciate the comment. Now, in the same line of comments as well with the same video, St. Nilo also mentioned and said, I just bought the game on sale after passing up on it. I can't lie, probably the best game I played all year. Combat at first seemed simple with flashy animations, but the more I played, the better I got. I realized how deep the combat was. Story was good. Feel dumb for listening to the hate. The graphics were good. The 30 FPS is not a problem for me, and that was the main reason I didn't get the game. So a lot of people are coming around to possibly see that initially all of the different conversations surrounding this game were for the most part kind of dumb, because what they did was they actually masked a lot of the real issues that the game actually had. The game is not perfect by any stretch. I mean, it depends on where you're playing. You can come up with all kinds of different challenges that you'll see in the game. But when people started talking about, 30 FPS this and 30 FPS that, to me, it was funny. That's why I didn't concede and say, well, 30 FPS was a bad thing, because a lot of games that people had just played all the way through just a few months ago, well, I say a few, but it's more like 24 months ago, were Game of the Year at 30 FPS. So those conversations to me seem kind of superficial and inflamed by a lot of people out here who just wanted to use that so-called inflamed gamer emotion to farm content. And lately, I've been disenfranchised by a lot of these so-called YouTubers or content creators whose only job is to sit there and critically analyze these video games, because that's what they do for money. So for the most part, they'd have to see things from that perspective, since it's supposedly appealing to their gamers. And for them to ever take the position of saying, you know what, there are things to be appreciated about some of these video games and actually highlight those, is going to be, in a sense, financially detrimental to them. I mean, look at my channel. If this was actually the view bringer, you think, all these other folks would not be making it. The position that I'm taking is actually a channel killer. But I don't care if the channel dies. I would rather the channel die in the fact that it's actually standing on what is true and what is as objective as possible. Because, and I know some people may say, maybe because you invested so much in Gotham Knights, you can't necessarily, kind of divest and stuff. Is I actually have all the evidence, and I have my playlist of hundreds of Gotham Knights videos. You're going to see that initially, I did not think that this game was actually going to be a good game. I actually looked at the game. I knew it was going to be an RPG. I knew exactly in my mind what we were to be expecting. I mentioned this in, dozens of videos. And even in my own personal thoughts, and when I was actually talking about the game, I thought, man, this game is not going to be anything. Come to release, I'm over here basically the one person that actually talks about this game from that perspective, even defending a lot of the hocus pocus BS that a lot of these folk are spreading, because many of them are straight up lying about this game. And to me, I just feel like if you're in that position where you're a content creator and you have the responsibility to be truthful to your audience, you have to at least take the time to do the due diligence. Like some people talking about the combat and so on and so forth, when they've all played other RPGs, and you can check off those boxes of what RPGs do and see that Gotham Knights actually checks those boxes off. In their minds, though, they were looking forward to the Arkham games and can't necessarily concede that the game kind of took them by surprise, in a sense where they weren't paying attention to what the game was about. But many of us were. And so I'm glad that these comments are actually coming to light. I'm glad that these sentiments are changing. The game is going to eventually get recognized. It's going to be that thing where you're going to start seeing the videos. Just give it a few minutes. Oh, Gotham Knights was overly criticized, or Gotham Knights was underappreciated, or Gotham Knights was not well, blah, blah, blah. You know, they're going to be doing all these videos very soon because this is how the internet works. Initial overreactionaries, and then eventually they come back and farm the opposing side of the entire argument. We saw this with the Arkham games. Go and look at a lot of the YouTubers that cover a lot of these games. They're coming back to say, oh, the Arkham games were overly criticized. Oh, you know what? The Batmobile kind of is now something I appreciate. Blah, 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 blah. Yo, it was right there in front of you and you criticized it, you castigated it, and threw it in the trash. If you had just taken the time to sit down and carefully analyze exactly what your thoughts were, or look at the game from a different perspective, you would have probably not made that reactionary video. And I say this not to slight anyone. I did the same thing in the early times when I was making YouTube videos. I was always criticizing the Division. I was always making, all these different videos saying, man, these were problems and blah, blah, blah. And true, some of them were problems, but at the same time, I had to take a whole different, look at things and say, if at all these things are problems, or if at all these things are issues, I can't necessarily only sit here and worry about all those issues, because any video game, even the best games that I would appreciate, still have their problems as well. And I think this is a reality that we all are coming into. In fact, I still see people making fun of Gotham Knights when they talk about Suicide Squad and how they don't like Suicide Squad. They're like, oh, it's a soulless cash grab. And I'm like, well, Gotham Knights is a single player game. What are you talking about, a soulless cash grab? If you want to criticize Gotham Knights for anything, maybe it's the fact that you don't have enough boss fights, but you do have enough content that continues to repeat itself. It's a decent way to do things, especially in an RPG game when you're looping things. Elden Ring does the same thing. Enemy NPCs are going to respawn in, specific areas like dungeons, and you have very similar aspects in regard to how the entirety of the game goes. So this is pretty much, a video that I like to make, and I'm going to keep making videos like these when people are, in a sense, coming around to the game after initially, adopting the perceptions of these so-called reviewers out here, because I can't stand, just the fact that these reviewers pretty much did not take the time to look at this game. And many of them pretended. Ooh, that's the one that bothered me the most. Some of them were they are RPG players. They played a lot of RPG games and then came out here to start pretending like, oh, who wants, elemental damage resistance? Skill up. You said that. And who needs elemental damage resistance? You played the Division 1 and I watched a bunch of your videos. You used to have exotic damage resistances and exotic damage on your gear, and you enjoyed that game and made videos about that game. Bruh, if I start, man, it's not going to end, but I got to get out of here. Thanks so much for watching the video. Peace out.